let's keep answering a few more of you guys' questions. And again, thank you to people like Jerwa that just became a member. Really, really appreciate that. Let's see. So this is a good question actually from Gerardo Neva. Thank you so much again for your generous donation as well. Why are these newer rockets more powerful but less impressive at launch than the space shuttle, for example? So far, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever seen a rocket that's more powerful than the space shuttle. If that helps answer your question, because the statement was, why are these newer rockets more powerful but less impressive? I have not seen a rocket fly that's more powerful than the space shuttle yet. And SLS likely will be the first rocket that I see fly that is more powerful than the space shuttle because it has an extra, about 25% more thrust out of its solid rocket boosters. And it has 4 RS-25 main engines on its core stage as opposed to 3. So it is basically just a more powerful version of the space shuttle. But Falcon 9, much less powerful than the space shuttle. Falcon Heavy is I can't remember right off the top of my head what that was. Can you repeat that too, by the way, Andrew? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So we do have a statement on exactly why they scrubbed the first opportunity. They basically had a drop in stage 2 helium supply pressure. But they are moving into recycling operations. So what that means is these vehicles have helium that keeps the tanks at pressure. We've talked about a few times on the show now today that the tank pressure is an extremely important thing because you have a lot of dynamic systems that are all at play here, and especially when the rocket starts to fly, you have liquids draining out of a tank, but obviously that could create a void. So you have to backfill with gas. Gaseous propellants or a gaseous inert gas. You have to backfill as the liquid drains out of it. Imagine if I took this bottle of water and if I turned it upside down and let it pour out, there's going to be air needs to fill those gaps of where, this is not sponsored by Smart Water, by the way. Yeah, the air would fill the gaps of the water bottle. And you'll see that, if you're pouring water out, it'll glug, 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 glug. That's air shooting back up the system. That obviously isn't going to be happening when something's being pumped forced out of a tank. You have to backfill and provide gas back into those regions so the tank maintains pressure, so you don't have the tank getting crushed or anything like that, because that's actually what would happen if you drained it without backfilling it. So they backfill it with helium, and helium is good for a few reasons. Number one, it's inert, meaning it will not react with the fuel or the oxidizer. It will not cause any problems with combustion. And the number two reason is it's extremely lightweight and undense, and so it's easy to pack a lot of it into a small COPV or a composite overwrapped pressure vessel, which is a high. They put these tanks under very high pressure, and that allows them to be able to stuff just an insane amount of helium in these little tanks, and then they can just vent a little bit of it out, and because it's so sparse, it expands it and can fill these voids. And that's why helium is used for that most often. There's also, sometimes they'll use nitrogen as also an inert gas, but it's not, you can't compress it as much and make it fill those voids as easily. So, yeah, so that's actually a good thing. You do want a sparse gas when you're trying to fill a large volume. You might know, hydrogen tanks, for example, on, say, SLS or Delta IV Heavy or previously the Space Shuttle, the hydrogen tank was huge because per mass, the volume it takes up is huge. So those tanks are just massive in order to have the same amount of mass in your tank. So lightweight molecules take up a lot of space, and that's a good thing for your backfill. So that's basically what happened. Yeah, so they had a stage 2 helium supply pressure, and they are that's what they're recycling and reworking. So yeah, that's good. Like we said, we're down to T-minus 31 minutes basically. So obviously the teams are moving to try it again. You do see, by the way, in this shot, you guys can actually see some white patches on the outside of the vehicle where liquid oxygen is stored. You can see just a little bit of white ice buildup. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, why the whole vehicle isn't frosty white at all times. Maybe it's too warm out here, but you can see it there in that shot, which is pretty cool. So let's see. Let's see. This is again from Cadber wanting to know a little bit more about the tap-off cycle. We have talked about it a handful of times. I definitely have to say, if you guys want to learn more about the tap-off cycle, I promise you, if you watch, I have a video titled "How to Power a Rocket Engine." It's all the different rockets, the cycle types of rocket engines. So things like pressure-fed, monoprop, bipropellant, hypergolic bipropellants. And you go into pump-fed, you go into electric pump-fed, and gas generators. You go into closed cycle. You go into fuel-rich and oxygen-rich closed cycle, or you go into full flow. But tap-off and expander cycle are two other types of cycle types. And what's unique about tap-off is that they literally basically take the high-pressure hot gas that's inside the combustion chamber, and they divert that gas into the turbine of the turbine is what powers the pumps. It's basically, I don't know if you're familiar with a turbocharger in a car. You basically flow the exhaust gas of each cylinder bank. It's pretty hot gas. It's high-velocity gas. You force that through a turbine that spins a turbine up, and then you dump that out, and then that is connected on a shaft to a compressor wheel. That compressor wheel then forces more air into the engine. This is similar, where it's taking a turbine, and you're basically taking some of the exhaust, some of the high-pressure hot gas that's inside the combustion chamber. You're shooting it through a tube at a turbine. That spins up the turbine up to high, like 30,000 RPM, and then that's connected to a shaft to a set of pumps. One set of pumps runs pressure for the RP1 for the fuel, and another set of pumps, or another pump then will put liquid oxygen into the engine. So that's what the tap-off cycle is. I go into a lot of depth in that video. I promise. If you haven't watched that one, that might be one of the most in-depth and one of the best walkthroughs of all of the different cycle types. And I love that video. I think that video, I have to kind of reference some of the things. I love learning new things whenever I make a video, a long-form video. And that's one of those where I still learned a few things, especially about enthalpy, which is the relation of heat and pressure and mass flow, and all these different things, and how they actually is used throughout the system of a rocket engine. Because you do lose pressure, you lose heat in certain areas as you transfer from, say, heat energy into kinetic energy, or velocity into kinetic energy, pressure into kinetic energy, all the kinetic energy. There's a lot of that in rocket engines, and I go through that in great detail in that video. So I promise it sounds scary, but it's actually really fun. So this is a good question from Donovan Stagg. Wanted to know any specific reason they are doing a retrograde launch, and what are the advantages? The advantages, actually, there aren't advantages. This is hard. This is actually harder for them technically as far as a capability of the rocket. They lose performance flying retrograde. But the biggest reason, this is a developmental vehicle. This is a demonstration of a brand new rocket that has yet to demonstrate being able to get to orbit. This is the second launch attempt ever of this rocket with this company. And flying retrograde from California allows them to fly basically as far away from populated areas as possible. So although they're basically fighting the rotation of the Earth to get into orbit, this thing's fighting, having to run upstairs, like running up an escalator that's going down. That's almost like what they're doing. It's harder to do that, but that way, that's what the company feels comfortable with for their first orbital launch attempts. That's what the range and the FAA and all the people involved in issuing a launch license, that's what everyone feels comfortable with, and that's a great way to demonstrate your ability to get into orbit. It's just simply fly as far away from any populated areas or any things of intrinsic value. So that's exactly what the teams are doing. They're playing it nice and safe, and it'll provide a really good view for us here, because we'll be able to watch it come up right over, from my point of view, like right over this mountain here, and then it'll look like it'll go a little bit to my left. It'll fly a little bit south, but a lot of west, and it's going to be really cool. So this is one of our views here, looking at the mountaintop there. Man, it is very windy. We got to apologize for the wind, even though it's crazy. Even though we're on some really heavy-duty lens mounts and things, no matter how sturdy it is, the wind has a different thing to say. So, yep, whoopsie doodle. Let's see. So this is a great question from Yoman. Does that mean there is no preburner? That's exactly right. That's exactly the beauty of the tap-off cycle, is there is no preburner. There is no gas generator. They literally, it's crazy. They literally just take the already high pressure from the main combustion chamber, and they just pipe it over. Now the hard thing, and the thing that they have to solve, some of the biggest technology that had to be developed, was how do you make it so the exhaust, what you put through the turbine is an okay temperature to not just absolutely destroy the turbine. Because the turbine can only handle, like, I think Tom Marcusic gave it to me in Fahrenheit, and I can't recall those numbers off the top of my head in Celsius, but it's something like, the main combustion chamber I think was like 4,000 or 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and the turbine can only handle like 1,200 degrees Fahrenheit or something around that scale. Again, I'm just talking off the top of my head. So you have to find a way to make sure that the exhaust gas that's coming out of the main combustion chamber, by the time it hits the turbine blades and the turbine wheel, it can't be that hot. It has to be cooler temperatures in order to do that. And so that's actually part of the intellectual property. That's part of the beauty. That's part of the technology that Firefly has developed in-house. And along with, originally it was with Ukrainian friends that developed some of the pump systems. There's about 200 engineers that worked on that system to be able to make the pump fed system in this that is using the tap-off cycle. Really cool cycle type. Again, it's never made it. No one's ever built a tap-off fed rocket engine, booster engine that's flown to orbit. So this very well could be the first rocket to make it to orbit with the tap-off cycle. I expect it to be. And again, it's a really cool technology, and I would love to know. I'll have to do some digging to see what options there are, because one of the ways you can cool off that exhaust is sometimes you have to dump more fuel to make it more fuel rich in just that flow of gas that goes through the turbine and through the turbine wheel. But Tom Marcusic said they don't do that. So that goes like, that makes me just go, how can you lower the temperature without changing your fuel to oxidizer ratio? So they've obviously developed something pretty cool by being able to come right off the manifold right there and send it right off the injector face, send it right into, it's pretty magic. I would love to learn more. So let's see, this is actually a good question here from Wigan Creative. Is the black paint preventing frost formation? Believe it or not, that is not black paint. It is carbon composite. It's carbon fiber. That's basically, I'm not going to say raw carbon fiber, but it is actually a really fine carbon fiber, and it's just, carbon composites, you end up with all the composite, the stuff that holds it and binds it together. But if you get up close to the vehicle, you see the carbon fiber strands of it. It's not painted. It just is black because it's carbon composite, which is obviously super cool. Yeah, even in that shot, you can kind of see, thanks to 4K, you can kind of see a little bit of that in the very bottom where it's kind of glinting off the sun, just a little. And actually, right above you can see the clamp arm there. You can kind of see a little bit of the fibers, the strands of carbon fiber that make up the carbon fiber. You can see where the strongback that clamp is holding onto it. You can sort of start to see the fibers even there. That shot is going to be so cool when this thing lifts off, watching the umbilicals rip away. I mean, that's going to be amazing. I can't believe we have this in 4K. I mean, that is so cool. Oh, I'm just tickled. All right. Yes. So again, to reiterate this from Living Excuse, so if successful, this will be the first tap-off cycle ever to reach orbit. That is exactly correct. Yeah, no one has ever. I don't even know if there's been that many attempts. Honestly, I can't think of the history of that. But yeah, if successful, this will be the first tap-off cycle ever to reach orbit. That's exactly right. One moment here. All right, cool. So we're moving on here. Let's see. This is from Sway Sanchez. Why is SpaceX Vandy, or in general, what we could actually just say, why is Vandenberg so underutilized compared to Florida and Kennedy Space Center, Cape Canaveral? Well, the simple answer is there's actually a limitation to where you can fly a rocket on the West Coast. Because don't forget, when you launch a rocket, you have to basically fly over unpopulated areas. All rockets look at least in the United States, whenever they launch a rocket, they fly it over unpopulated areas. So they'll fly over the ocean. They'll close off, the marine traffic, the flight traffic. They make sure that the rocket is safe from anyone nearby. And so in the U.S. you fly over the ocean. So if you're on the East Coast, you can fly eastwardly. You can fly in a low inclination orbit, meaning you can fly anywhere from about 51, 52, maybe 55 degrees. But at some point from Florida, you start actually running. If you go too far north, you start running into New York City and all those places. So you do have to fly at an inclination, an inclination again. If you're flying due east, 0 degrees, if you're on the equator, you would be going right around the equator. So that would be like a 0 degree inclination. 90 degree inclination would be going up and down over the poles. That'd be a 90 degree inclination. 180 degree inclination would be flying backwards, going backwards around the equator. So 51.6 degree, that's what the International Space Station is on. And that's close to the upper limit of how inclined you can fly from Kennedy Space Center without a dogleg maneuver. I have to say that because SpaceX has actually flown some really high inclination orbits from Kennedy Space Center, but they're doing that with these really big dog-legged maneuvers, and because of that, they actually lose performance in the rocket. They can't put as heavy payloads into orbit, so fun little fact there. But Vandenberg has its own limitations. It can't fly eastwardly, so you can only fly basically in the polar corridors. You can basically fly polar orbits only, and or retrograde. So yeah, if you're launching something into into space, you really are limited here at Vandenberg Space Force Base to what orbits you can get into. And it's just not really it depends. It's not really as common to fly sun-synchronous orbits or polar orbits. They're good for Earth observation and things like that, and some communication satellites, they're helpful. But for the most part, a lot of the satellites we see are launched, if you're going out to geostationary orbit or most low Earth orbits and things like that, and medium Earth orbits are all launched eastwardly. So you can't do that here. You'd fly over California, you'd fly over Las Vegas and Nevada, all these places. So that is not an option. And by the way, we are within T-minus 20 minutes, so we're probably getting close to the teams being able to ready to go for their second attempt. We're still awaiting more information here, but yeah, I mean, at this point we are closing in on that, so we'll wait to hear more information, and hopefully, they're obviously the teams are always watching weather, watching all the systems at play, so we'll see how the rest of this goes. So let's see, Lab Padre, holy cow, huge thank you to Lab Padre and the Lab Padre community and all those at Starbase. It's fun being out here. I wish you guys were out here too. Thank you so much, Lab Padre. That is insanely generous. Holy crap. Yeah, thank you so much for putting gas in the tank of Luna. Really appreciate that. Lab Padre knows the ins and outs of live streaming like crazy. For those of you that are space flight fans and have watched Progress at Starbase, you know Lab Padre 100%. So Lab Padre also has cameras in Florida as well, so they're no stranger to live streams. So thank you so much, Lab Padre and Lewis and the whole team there. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in. That really means a lot. So let's see here. Let's see. This is from Goat Pilot. Wants to know, are they using some sort of ram air to cool at higher Mach? Can we get scramjet rocket engines, please? 7,500 mile an hour cowl hood. So no, unfortunately, for the most part, you have to realize going fast in an atmosphere is very hard to use that to cool anything. As you speed up in the atmosphere, even if it's in the upper atmosphere, as you start to compress molecules, compress air, it heats up. That's thanks to the laws of thermodynamics. So for using that to cool something off, it's actually really hard to cool something when you're going at high Mach numbers and things like that. So realistically, I don't know if you can use a cowl on high-speed, hyper-speed vehicles to be able to fly and to cool things. And frankly, the problem is, too, once it gets into a certain altitude and things like that, the rocket, you can't use air to convect and get heat away from it. You can radiate heat when there's no atmosphere, but to use convection to cool things, like a lot of us are used to fans cooling things here at sea level or on Earth in our atmosphere. We can use fans to cool things because you can blow air across it. You'll transfer heat from the object through the air. That's convection. But in space, and frankly, a much better way to do things is using liquid cooling. Because if you think about it, the rocket is actually, it has liquid propellant, really cold liquid propellant, or even the normal RP-1 flowing through the engine. Think about, I don't know if any of you have like high-end gaming computers and use liquid cooling. You're familiar with how you can basically put up a radiator. You can flow liquid through the core of the processor and then back out to the radiator to wick that heat away. But liquids are really good. It transfers heat very well. So that's basically what they're doing with the rocket engine. They're going to be flowing a lot of propellant from these propellant tanks into the engine anyway. So what they do is they flow that propellant through the walls of the engine first. As it's going from the pumps, and then they literally have these little channels through the nozzle and through the walls of the engine and then that goes into the combustion chamber after that. It goes back up the wall, so kind of sometimes they do like a turnaround. They go down the nozzle, back up the nozzle. They'll cool the whole nozzle, the throat, up the walls of the chamber, and then they'll end up in the injector plate and flow into the engine from there through like a manifold and through an injector plate. So that's actually how you, and again, I have a whole video about how you cool rocket engines, because this is another one of my favorite topics, is how do you keep these things that are holding, you know, temperatures as hot as the sun inside of these walls that would melt under those conditions? But there's a lot of really cool science and engineering that goes into making that possible without making it get destroyed and melty. So yeah, liquid cooling is definitely the preferred method. But a cowl is a fun idea, but I don't think it'd be a good way to cool things. So this is a good question from Owen Medford. What is the liquid dripping from the engines, fuel or liquefying frost? So actually, I can't speak to what it is at all times, but I think lots of times when you are just seeing it literally like occasional drips, that might be just condensation coming out of the condensation developing because the engines are very cold. They have been chilled down, and condensation will develop and drip off of the engine there too. And don't forget, there's also like frost on the outside of the rocket, so some of it might be making it down the fuselage and dripping. But you will see engine bleed in at some point when they, I think it was around T-3 minutes, they do flow and get the vehicle ready for cryogenic temperatures. Because again, liquid oxygen is extremely cold. When it hits that pump, the liquid oxygen pump, if you don't prepare that pump for all of a sudden an onslaught of really cold cryogenic propellant, you might crack or break or ruin the pump. So they have to first start flowing propellant through the engine to get it thermally conditioned for the cold temperatures. Isn't that weird? When we think about rockets, we think about the hot temperatures. We think about the crazy flames and exhaust shooting out of the flamey end of the rocket. But really, it's the cold that they have to thermally condition the rocket engine for. I think that's super cool. All right, so we do have an update that they will be moving the T0 time to, did I hear correctly? Can you repeat? Okay, they are moving their T0 time to 7 p.m. That is the absolute back end of their window now, which, if that thing flies at 7 p.m., that's going to put on quite the show, because the sun sets at 7:15. So if they do go right at that 7 p.m. window, it will be a beautiful, beautiful launch. So that is 3 hours from now, which means I'm going to be taking a few breaks here, so I'm not just yabbing on and on and on and on for hours and hours and hours. But we will get that updated. There we go. We already got it updated. T-2 hours and 51 minutes is our official new T0 time right at the end of their 4-hour launch window. Again, their window opened up at 3 p.m. Pacific time, which I think is +7, so 15, 22 UTC. So now we're moving into a new T0 time at the end of the launch window, their 4-hour launch window, right at 7 p.m. So, yeah. So hopefully we hear, hopefully the teams are not working any big issues and they are able to get this off the ground today. But we will stand by for more information as soon as we know it. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. This is still just the absolute dream for me, just to be here. The fact that I can actually update, I love it, because so many times when I'm doing launch commentary or something, there's a lot of speculation and we don't have the answers and we don't know. We're just like, well, maybe the teams are doing X, Y, and Z, and we really have no idea. But it's fun for me to actually tell you, like, yeah, they're working on, the helium pressure was the first scrub, and now maybe they're working whatever. Maybe they're looking for weather. We don't actually have the updates. I'm bragging about having information, and I currently don't have information to brag about. But the fact that we actually know the T0 time is now 7 p.m. So it's at the very end of their 4-hour launch window. So let's go ahead and I'll answer a few more questions just to, answer questions. Actually, you know what, Andrew? At some point, let's queue up. There is that video that they have about this second launch attempt. Maybe we'll queue that up. Let me know when that's ready to go to air, and I'll answer one more question. I don't remember. I think it was originally called, I don't remember what the title of that video is, but it's got Tom Marcusic in it talking about their second launch attempt. So we'll queue that video up. It's actually, the teams that make these videos we're very fortunate. Yeah, I think we're getting ready to queue up that video. I'll let you know when we're good to go there. So let's see. Operator Unit 60 or 60 says, is it weird to be excited about going back to the moon? No, that's the whole point. That's like not the entire reason humans are going back to the moon, but Absolutely, that is a totally fair and expected thing, is to be excited that humans are returning to the moon. And again, Firefly actually has a vehicle that's going to be scouting for Artemis landing sites as a commercial lander. It's an uncrewed lander, but it's called Blue Ghost, and that vehicle is actually one of the commercial programs that NASA has enlisted to land on the moon, scope it out, see how it is as a potential landing site for humans for the Artemis program. And it's stuff like this commercial partnership with NASA, all these cool opportunities that are cropping up. I just love seeing that. I love seeing a company like this make a lunar lander that's going to help us know if a certain location is safe to land on the moon. That's really cool. But more on that in a second. Let's watch that video here from that talks about the first launch attempt and the second launch attempt.
Commit for launch.
Achieving first flight is a huge milestone for a rocket company.
3, 2, 1.
But ultimately, this business is about getting to orbit and doing it repeatedly. We did learn a lot from the first flight. We fixed the minor problems and are ready to get back to the launch pad. What has impressed me most is the growth of the team. When we tested the first flight vehicle, it took us over 18 times to get it fully functional. In getting ready for this second flight, both the vehicle and the team performed flawlessly on the first attempt. We've gotten smarter, faster, and more disciplined.
Made it all the way.
We are ready for orbit. See you at the launch pad.
And there we are at the launch pad. I think that's really cool. Again, we've talked a little bit on air about what some of the exact changes are to the vehicle, and really, frankly, they didn't do many changes. Actually, they did increase the thrust 8% though from the first rocket to the second rocket. This vehicle actually has 8% more thrust out of its Reaver engines, and that is mostly thanks to just at first you're running these engines really, really carefully. You're running them very conservatively. You do most of that with your oxidizer to fuel ratio, so your OF ratio. You hear that, and the closer, so they basically were running at like a 2.2 OF ratio at first, which is very conservative. Now they're up to a 2.3, which is a little bit leaner. It's a little bit hotter. It's higher performance though, and that's so that's how they were able to get that. They're aiming for closer to like a 2.4 at some point, and they can increase the capacity even more then. So I think they're aiming for, again, I was quoted in thrust in pounds. I don't remember if they show thrust in pounds on their website or what. They do, but yeah, they're aiming for like 45,000 pounds out of each engine. And I think they're currently now at 42,000. So they've already gone up quite a bit from their first vehicle. So good to see them continually working on things and making upgrades already. But for the most part, the vehicle itself is the same. They're just kind of tweaking and tuning the engine and tweaking and tuning some of their systems on hand just to make it, more robust, more higher performance, and more production ready. I think that's kind of the big things that the teams are working through here. So let's see. This is a good question. This is a fun one to answer here. Wondering Fool, thank you for your tip. Asking, how many cameras does the team currently have set up? Also, this is a wonderful time to be a space fan thanks to the new vehicles and technologies. 100. This is like the ultimate time to be a space flight. It's got to the point now where there's so many exciting things. It's easy to miss things in the spaceflight world. And I think 5 years ago, 10 years ago, there were so few things going on in the spaceflight world that any launch was like, oh, there's a launch. There's like 6 launches a year or something. Like, just very, it is so easy to tune into every little thing. And nowadays, there's so much exciting stuff. There's so many new big updates, so many new things to get excited about that it's actually easy to miss some of the things. But I wanted to answer this question. How many cameras does the team currently have set up? We could do a little camera tour while we're hanging out here. This is one of our cameras on. This is kind of behind some of the fuel, or in front of some of the fuel tanks. There's a wall similar to the one you see kind of in the bottom right. This is the engine cam. This is a Firefly provided camera. It's an engineering camera looking at their engines. We also have beloved trench cam. This is the flame trench. This is where when the rocket lights up, there is a flame diverter, so the exhaust will shoot out the side through this flame trench, which will, if you pull up the next shot, will also show the flame trench. But okay, we'll see that in the next shot here. We also have the teams at mission control. So we do have cameras inside mission control here. Then we have some tracking assets from the range. These are really, really, really high-end tracking cameras that track the vehicle on its way to orbit. This is another Firefly provided camera. Is this also a tracking camera? This is another tracking camera. So we have 2 range provided tracking assets, which are going to be awesome to be able to follow along. This is one of our cameras. That's the one looking at the strong back and looking at the umbilicals. And of course, once the rocket takes off, you will see the engines go right through that shot. We might not cut to it live on air, but we are recording, so we'll be able to have that beautiful ship footage. This is the shot, the other shot of the flame trench. So you can kind of see the yellow bits there of the railing. Down in there is that pit, and that's the flame trench. That's where when the rocket lights, the exhaust gets diverted out there, and it will make a whole bunch of smoke and exhaust a big plume right there. That'll be a fun shot to see at liftoff. And then this is back to our first camera. So those are our cameras on the pad. We personally have 4 4K cameras. Oh, here's another 4K camera at the pad too. So we have 4 of our own 4K cameras to provide you with the beautiful views that we see here today. But then also here with us, we have a couple of tracking cameras as well on some pretty large tracking mounts. And I don't know if we'll punch those up or not, but we do have some really long lenses. This is one of them looking right at the mountain. That the rocket's going to come up right over that mountain. That's another one looking at the water tower. We use that as a reference here to know where the rocket's going to be. But that, yeah, you're actually looking through a lot of glass there. We have, when this rocket comes up over the mountain, even though it's relatively small, we'll have a really tight shot on it. It's going to look awesome. So, yeah. All right, let's keep going here with messages. Okay. What? Thank you so much to Sarah Hankins. I'm speechless. Thank you so much. Everyone say thank you to Sarah Hankins for the most generous super chat you can even do. Holy crap. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. From the absolute bottom of my heart. That makes this stuff all possible. There's just been countless days of getting the team out here and flying everyone in and setting up and the food and the gas and all of the things. Thank you. That really means a lot. That's what makes this stuff happen. So I really, 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 really appreciate that. Everyone say thank you to Sarah. That is just, yeah, you make this happen. So thank you so much. And yeah, I don't even know what to say after something like that. How can people be so generous? That's huge. That makes this job feasible. So thank you so much. And also, I feel like I do also owe our patrons and our YouTube members a huge shout out too, because again, especially lately, as you guys know, those of you that have watched my videos lately, I posted a video a couple weeks ago about the build out of our 4K production truck that we're using today, that we drove from Florida to California. We've been working on that for months and months and months now. And we could only be doing that because we do have some incredibly generous support from YouTube members and Patreon supporters that make that stuff possible. So I love to make videos. Videos are my passion. I love to do these deep dives. But lately, we have some exciting things happening in the spaceflight industry. We are here at the first, hopefully the first successful launch of a brand new rocket company with a really impressive rocket using the tap-off cycle, doing all sorts of brand new things. This is the very beginning of a company, a really exciting company. We're able to provide coverage for that because we were able to do this awesome van. We also are able to cover Artemis program, the initial launches of SLS and the Orion capsule to the moon. I mean, come on, these are huge milestones. We have SpaceX working on Starship. This is the start of a really new era in spaceflight with commercial companies making really exciting vehicles. This is the time for us to really be diving in and capturing history, and this is you guys make that possible. I wouldn't be able to do this at this capacity and be able to do this without your help, without your viewers out there, without the support and being able to do this thanks to the teams at Firefly with this particular mission. This is just an absolute dream come true. So again, thank you. Huge. So thank you so much. Man, I don't even know how to move on from there. I feel like we almost need to just take a break because that's like a mic drop from Sarah. Thank you so much. Man, wow. Okay, I feel like I'm speechless. So thank you to all of you that support. If you, again, remember, if you do have a question, you don't have to do a super chat or donation to be on air. Our moderators are looking for good questions to put into our queue, and I'll gladly answer any questions. I feel like we've answered a lot of fun questions about the tap-off cycle, about carbon composites, about flying retrograde. But I feel like I can't think of any offhand. But you guys always come up with such good questions. Let me know if you have one, and I'll be happy to answer it to the best of my abilities. Again, I've been absolutely fortunate enough to be working with Firefly on this. We get updates from them. Obviously, we have a very close working relationship to be able to provide you the stream. And although I am kind of their voice today, I am not officially with Firefly. So I might make a boo-boo, and that's not on them. That's on me. So just keep that in mind, too, that the things that I say here on air, I'm like a free agent. They're somehow trusting me to just speak for hours and hours. But that means the world to me. That means that is just the ultimate dream come true for me to be able to sit here and just nerd out over rockets for hours and wait for what's going to be a gorgeous launch here out of Vandenberg Space Force Base. So, again, thank you to the teams of Firefly. So here's one of those things that just is so fun to see. Funky Cold Medina says, change career from a bachelor's in education in 2015, Earth and space science teacher now, hoping to go to space someday. Until then, thanks for bringing it to me. That is so cool. I feel like I would have loved to have a teacher excited about spaceflight when I was a kid and when I was in high school and things like that. But I didn't. I didn't have anyone mentoring me to get me excited about spaceflight because, frankly, I don't know if there was anything really that exciting. The space shuttle was so routine when I was growing up that flew and people just weren't really paying attention. But we are definitely in a new era where there's a lot of new ground being broken, a lot of new exciting things happening. And it's thanks to wonderful educators out there, helping get kids excited. I've seen so many people post pictures of, videos or using some videos and live streams. Like I've seen my videos be used in the classroom, which is the ultimate compliment. I've seen teachers post pictures of, NASA spaceflight or Lab Padre or some of the other content creators out there making videos about spaceflight, using that in their classroom to get kids and people excited. That just means that's so cool. That's what it's all about right there is I feel like you only really, just like anything, if you learn more about it, the more you learn about something, the easier it is to be excited about it. I think, for me, I'm not really a big sports fan. We last night while we were setting up and eating, we played a game of Tim tried to name the professional team from a city. I couldn't name hardly one from any city. Although Ryan, from Cosmic Perspective, you might have me beat with not having good sports knowledge. But, I think it's because neither of us have the knowledge, therefore it's hard to be excited about sports, But people that know, every player on the team, they know the history of their favorite team, of course they're extremely passionate. And it's the same thing for spaceflight. I think the more you know and understand rockets, understand the history, understand the progress and where we're going, how can you not be excited? That's the whole thing for me, is this is becoming kind of a spectator sport. So, yeah, let's see. So, Let's answer a few more questions here. Rockets Red Wines. I'm 20 miles east of Vandenberg, and storms are brewing up. Hope the weather holds. Stay shiny. Yeah, if we look over to our east, we are. Could we actually get just one of those cameras pointed east? We are. It's overcast over this way, but it is. It's pretty clear blue west. So I'm able to look and see. Oh, we're dialed in. So maybe we don't want to move. Oh, we can talk about yes. So we'll do that in a second. Ryan's reminding me that we actually have, so you can see from this camera here, we have a lot of overcast skies here compared to the pad that looks clear. A lot of our cameras there look bright blue. But yeah, we got some weather it's just kind of getting grayer and grayer the further you move east. Let's see this shot. I'm trying to think about which direction this guy's facing. This is more or less facing east, actually. So this is seeing that storm cloud kind of move in. Actually, that's a good view there, Andrew. I like that one because that's giving you a sense of some of the weather that they might be contending with. So that might actually be why one of the reasons why the clock has moved, why the T0 clock has moved. So yeah, good to keep as a reminder. So thank you so much. Let's keep answering some of your questions here from Alex Jones. Thank you so much for saying Ad Astra. That camera's looking west. Double check that on Google Maps for me. I'm pretty sure that one's east, but because the ocean's at its back, so it's looking east. Yeah. So let's see here. Matthew wants to know, will I be live streaming or watching the ABL Space RS-1 launch? Yeah, I don't know exactly when. I haven't really heard any updates yet, but absolutely.